afternoon. Welcome. You are tuned into the Labor Forum here at WRFG 89.3 FM in Atlanta. Unbelievably, it is December 21st, and we have just one more show of the Labor Forum next Monday in 2015, and then we will be starting a new year with all kinds of great guests. I am a retired auto worker. I worked for 30 years. It's hard for me to imagine. On assembly lines for General Motors, both here and in New York State. Seated next to me here in the studio is Ayana Dunlop-Bell, and she's our every other week co-host. Hi, Ayana.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. We're always happy. I always am happy to come into the studio because we're always going to have such interesting conversations. The opinions that are expressed on this program, though, are those of the people who make them. They may not necessarily be that of the Board of Directors, staff, or volunteers here at WRFG. But you know, I always, right after I say that, I always say that this program is a key element in the mission of the station. WRFG is a mission-driven station. That means we were formed and we continue to take on the issues that are important to people who frankly are, for the most part, not on any of the big business media, and that's those who have, whether it's by race, it's by creed, it's by immigrant status, it's by gender, it's by disability, it's by class. You just don't find our opinions and our solutions to problems on major big business media. So we're going to go right ahead with our labor headlines for today. And Ayana's going to do the labor history, and then we are going to have a conversation about young workers' activities. And then in the 4:30 segment, we're going to have a discussion with Dre Probst, who is with Black Lives Matter. There was a meeting this past week of several hundred people to form a chapter here in Atlanta, and we're very excited to hear about the progress of this very important movement. So here we go. Monday, December 21st, 2015, today's headline news opens with a too often story of unbridled corporate exploitation of workers in Mexico. The giant printer company Lexmark, with revenues of $3.7 billion in 2014, employs 14,000 people worldwide. It was drawn to the city of Juarez, across the U.S. border from El Paso, by the tax benefits offered by NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, the super low wages, and the convenient access to its markets in the States. Ciudad Juarez is the hub of Mexico's manufacturing zone with some 300,000 factory workers, mainly working for U.S. and other foreign companies. It is also one of the most dangerous cities in the world, with warring drug cartels responsible for thousands of deaths, kidnappings, and disappearances every year. A flourishing system of corruption exists, with collaboration among government officials and agencies, multinational businesses, criminal elements, and the police. Lexmark operates a printer cartridge plant in Juarez, where some 700 workers went on strike several days ago after the company refused to give workers a 35 cents a day increase in pay. I have to say that one more time. The company would not give a 35 cents a day increase in their wages. Experienced workers currently make about 114 pesos a day. Mexico's minimum wage is 70 pesos a day, or about $4. And you are hearing me right. It's $4 a day. The workers were asking for an increase to 120 pesos for a full day's work. And I'm going to say it one more time. A difference of 35 cents a day. 35 cents a day. 120 of the striking workers were fired last week, most of whom had been involved in efforts to establish an independent union that would advocate for pay increases and better working conditions. Lexmark's anti-worker policies are present in the U.S. as well. For example, in 2010, it was found to have engaged in wage theft in Los Angeles and ordered to pay millions in stolen wages. From yesterday's unity demonstration at Trump election headquarters in New York City to multiple disruptions of his hate-filled rallies, the billionaire's message of racism, Islamophobia, and warmongering is being challenged and denounced. But the workers at Trump International Las Vegas Hotel sent a particularly powerful rebuke on December 4th and 5th when a majority of the 500 employees voted to be represented by Culinary Workers Union Local 226 and Bartenders Union Local 165 of Unite Here. Coming from many national, ethnic, and religious backgrounds, these workers who serve the luxury hotel patrons fought for their rights to get good wages and benefits and respect on the job as protected by a union contract. 9 months ago, a similar victory was won at Trump International Hotel, Toronto. The news of the ratification of their contract in late November no doubt helped cement the Las Vegas win. Locals 226 and 165 represent over 57,000 workers in Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada. Congratulations to these newest unionized workers for showing the way to counter the racist, dangerous, anti-people demagogue, Donald Trump. Last week, on December 15th, Governor Nathan Deal's hand-picked Education Reform Commission released its report, giving a clear signal about the legislative package on school policy that will come before the Georgia legislature when it convenes in January 2016. I looked at who had been appointed to this commission and found that of the 34 members, only 12 were women, of whom 2 were the only teachers. 1 retired, and the other the 2011 Georgia Teacher of the Year. On the other hand, companies like Georgia Power, ABM Sports and Entertainment, or business-related foundations such as Cousins, that's the property and development giant, the Cousins Family Foundation, had representatives. Also, members were from charter management or lobbying groups, even an individual connected to the replacement of public schools in New Orleans. That was changed the New Orleans public schools to a privatized charter system. This guy had a place in the Governor's Education Reform Commission. You add 13 legislators, most holding powerful offices in the Georgia legislature, a dozen or so school superintendents and principals, government agency heads, and 1 syndicated columnist to the mix. It comes as no surprise that among the conclusions they came to is that more state money isn't the answer to Georgia's low education standing. In fact, more privatized school choice is, and teacher pay tied to test scores should be considered. And for good measure, the teacher pension system should be studied for, quote, long-term vitality, close quote. Couple the recommendations of this report with the constitutional ballot proposing the creation of a so-called opportunity school district, whereby a governor-appointed superintendent could close, turn over to a charter management, fire all the teachers and staff, or change the curriculum of schools deemed, quote, failing, and tossing aside the elected school boards, and we can see that the struggle for quality public education for all of Georgia's children is a fight we have to win. And that concludes our headlines for today. We're going to move right away into Ayana and This Week in Labor History.
Here on the Labor Forum, we know that the struggle of workers is an international one. Today, we recognize the life of Francisco Alves Mendez, better known as Chico Mendez, who was born on December 15, 1944, and assassinated on December 22, 1988. Chico Mendez was a rubber tapper, trade union leader, and environmental activist. He fought to preserve the Amazon rainforest and advocated for the human rights of Brazilian peasants and its indigenous peoples. He was born on a rubber reserve outside of the small town of Zapuri. He was the son of a second-generation rubber tapper. His father was one of the 50,000 men recruited in 1943 from Brazil's impoverished northeast and shipped to the Amazon to tap rubber for the United States war effort. With Malaya occupied by the Japanese, the U.S. was desperate for rubber, and Brazil promised to revive its once booming rubber industry to meet the need. Chico was one of 18 siblings, only 6 of whom survived childhood. At age 9, Chico began work as a rubber tapper. Schools were generally prohibited on the rubber plantations, and the owners did not want the workers being able to read or do math because they would then likely discover they were being exploited. Chico himself did not learn to read until he was 18 years old. The Rubber Tappers Union was created in 1975 with Mendez as its secretary. He also played a central role in the creation of the National Council of Rubber Tappers. When the first meeting of this new union was held in 1985, tappers from all over the country came. The discussion expanded from the threats to their own livelihoods to the larger issues of deforestation, road paving, and cattle ranching. The meeting also caught the attention of the international environmentalist movement. Strong ties were built with the National Campaign for the Defense and Development of the Amazon, and Mendez helped organize a local branch of the Workers' Party. To save the rainforest, the Rubber Workers Union asked the government to set up reserves as they wanted people to use the forest without damaging it. As an alternative, the creation of extractive reserves was proposed. These are protected areas that would allow public land to be managed by local communities with rights to harvest forest products. A very effective technique called the empate was used where men, women, and children would form human barricades to prevent the bulldozers from tearing down trees. Mendez believed that relying on rubber tapping alone was not sustainable and that the workers needed to develop more holistic, cooperative systems that used a variety of forest products such as nuts, fruit, oil, and fibers, and that they needed to focus on building strong communities with quality education for their children. His main opponents were cattle ranchers who were encouraged by the military, who ruled Brazil and financed by official banks. He received death threats from landowners who were enraged by his campaign to prevent forest clearance. The assassination took place exactly 1 week after Mendez's 44th birthday, when he had predicted that he would not live until Christmas. Mendez was the 19th rural activist to be murdered that year in Brazil. Far from killing off the forest conservation campaign, Mendez is now a symbol of the global environmental movement. Chico Mendez said, "At first I thought I was fighting to save rubber trees, and then I thought I was fighting to save the Amazon rainforest. Now I realize I'm fighting for humanity." His life is an inspiration to all of us who are fighting for both humanity and the planet.
Thank you. So I hope that was, maybe some of you had heard of Chico Mendez before, but for all of you for whom it was the first time, that's one of the values here at WRFG, and that we try to elevate the people in our working class movement who have made such big differences. So we're going to have a brief message right now, and then we're going to come back with Ayana, and we're going to talk about some of the campaigns and what's going on with young workers here.
WRFG now has a GoFundMe campaign to help us in our efforts to raise much-needed funds. Save independent media, $100,000 for 100,000 watts. You can support community radio by going to www.gofundme.com/WRFG radio. Help keep your favorite community radio station on the air year after year. That's www.gofundme.com/WRFG radio. All the volunteer staff and board, thank you so much for your love and support.
Welcome back to the Labor Forum. And before we get on to Ayana's report, I want to just also remind you of all the many, many ways that we really would hope that you would connect with the Labor Forum. We have a website, it's wrfglaborforum.org. And we'd really ask you, if you could, that you put the link to our website on your website, blog, or Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel. For those who haven't heard before, you always can go to the YouTube channel and watch our program streamed live right now, this second, or you can go and watch an archival copy later, maybe when you get home. And we also have a Facebook and Twitter page, and we'd love for you to join that as well. And if you ever have any suggestions or questions about any of the information or comments that you'd like to make about a guest on our program, you can always email us at laborforumwrfg@gmail.com. And with all of those announcements and addresses and forms of social media, we're going to turn it right now to Ayana. And this is going to be a regularly every other week report that she does.
Right.
And this is the first one, so I'm looking
It's
forward
officially
to
the first one. All right, so first of all, let me start by saying that I am Ayana Bell with Atlanta Leaders of Tomorrow, a lot. We are the young worker group that was founded here in the metro Atlanta area by our CLC or AFL-CIO. One of the biggest issues, of course, everyone knows that we are gearing up for 2016 elections and legislative sessions. Right now, millennials are currently 3 to 4 out of every 10 voting age American. And that's really a big thing, because sometimes the focus is always put on the age group of, say, 30 to 45 when it comes down to the demographics and voting. But as we proved in the Obama election 1 and 2, we have a huge voice and we can make a difference. So currently, we're asking that, you know, if you have students or working the young workers themselves, which we're considering ages 18 to 35, we want to make sure that they are aware of the issues that are coming up, especially here in Georgia with our legislative session about to open up in about 3 weeks, almost a month, about third week, January.
I know, I dread it every year.
Yeah, it's like going to war. And we will be very active during that time here in Atlanta, especially with a lot of the things that they're facing with employee misclassification, with the fair wages, the fight for 15, as well as affordable education. And of course, you know, with the big Supreme Court case coming up, Fredericks is going to be heard by the Supreme Court in January, and that is a direct attack on union. Point blank, is union busting at its finest, at its highest level.
Plus workers' comp.
Workers' comp, healthcare, any
Medicaid
issue that you
expansion.
could think of that should be given as a human right is under attack at this point. Not just here in Georgia, but nationwide. We're already a right to work state, and of course, you know, those fights are going to be popping off like wildfires all over the nation. And we're going to be there, active in each one of those major fights, including, I mean, not to exclude the Black Lives Matters, not to exclude that piece, not to exclude any civil or human right. We'll have a seat, hopefully, at some of those tables. But right now, one of the things that our young worker group nationally is asking is, with the debates and everything that are coming up leading into the election, that youth workers or students or whoever try to form what we're calling debate watch parties, just to be proactive so that you know what these people are saying, and when you go out to give the message, and when we go out to do GOTV or any kind of voter education, that we're educated, you know, on the things that matter and the topics and issues at hand. So that's the big thing that we got going on right now, just really ramping up for 2016 in a huge way. So, and we will be doing some some kind of recruiting going on soon here in Atlanta.
And that's it. That's it. So I think one of the comments I want to make is, as a person who, in my period of time at that age, got very much involved in electoral politics in trying to have an anti-war candidate during the Vietnam War, that it really, the critical thing that I think I learned about it was that you can't put all your eggs in that basket. That, in other words, regardless of what politician wins or loses, that if there's not a continuous, escalating, growing grassroots movement.
Right.
No politician ever does what the people really want,
Right.
and certainly never carries it to the degree that we want.
For the promises made during
Yeah,
campaign time.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing. I don't ever want young folks to get cynical, but I want them to be realistic about how the political system works, and that the political system really does not work at all unless you're organized. And I think that's one of the things we've always talked about in regard to workers in on a job. You know, bosses don't give you anything out of the goodness of their heart. They only give it to you when you have organized and you've got the ability to have them suffer consequences.
Right. And I think the other sentiment, especially with millennials, my age group, it just almost feels like, why am I going to vote? You know what I mean? It almost feels like the machine is running at a rate that we can't stop or we can't influence. So why do I have to put all this effort into getting up, you know, and going to vote? And I think that's what a lot of them want us to think. That's the sentiment. That's the mindset that they want you to be in. So I think a lot of it is an education piece. And I would like to say a registration piece, but registering is one thing, educating is something totally different. You know, you can register 1 million, but if only 100,000 show up, what good was it? I think the education piece is missing. I don't think a lot of times that the young workers understand how legislation and elections and just the political machine that it is control everything that you do. I would think that they're starting to wake up and see it, but I think it's our job to make sure that they see it.
Well, I think the other thing, and I'll be very frank again, when you watch the news, if you watch the local news or you read the local newspaper, for the most part, you really don't get a true idea of what is happening, and we'll just say in the Georgia legislature, any legislature. There are so many backroom deals. There are so many slippery things going on that it's very hard for almost anybody to keep track of it. And the presence of big money through lobbyists who take these legislators, you know, out to lunch and take them to sporting events,
Yacht trips,
do all, and golf vacations and all the rest, really means that unless people truly are just down there in big numbers, calling, writing, insisting, just, you know, won't stop, that for the most part our needs, our voices get pushed aside by dollar bills.
and that's where to me that's where labor kind of stands in the gap, because being a part of labor, we have lobbyists, we have people that are down there on the daily. You know, we even have one that sits, you know, in the House. So labor gives a voice to working people, but I want to make sure that the younger generation of working people is paying attention to labor and how labor can assist and how labor does lend a voice. Because right now, like I'm sure you said before, unions are so demonized. Labor is such a demonized force here in the United States that people just have a negative, they just automatically think negative of it. But without labor, without that voice, without that unity, without that, you know, push from organizations that are here to support working people, you know, we wouldn't have the opportunities that we have now to make a change or to affect any kind of legislation or change it or anything like that. So hopefully with the young worker movement, we're getting, you know, we have an opportunity to reach more and to educate more, which is where it has to start.
All right, thanks, Ayana. So I think we've got a couple of messages. Do we have a couple of messages, Christopher? And then Dre is right here, ready to come on. And I am so looking forward to this conversation. There was such a successful, wonderful meeting this last week at Big Bethel AME. We're going to talk to Dre Probst about the establishment of a Black Lives Matter chapter here in Atlanta, what that means for the struggle for justice and equality and the rights of all here. Thanks so much for staying tuned, and listen to this great message from WRFG, and we'll be right back.